With the offseason officially upon us, we could see several star players on the move, and in today's video, we got to talk about a star quarterback, running back, and wide receiver who could all be on new teams next season. But before I get to that, the Eagles held their Super Bowl parade today, and there's some definite things to look at, so let's get into it all right after. First up, the Eagles held their Super Bowl parade in Philadelphia. There was a lot of positives and fun moments, and then a not-so-positive moment. I can relate to this as I was at the parade last year in Kansas City when a shooting broke out, and there was a small-ish shooting that happened. 2 people were unfortunately reportedly shot, both in stable condition, so that's good. But it's obviously just awful when all these people get together. You never know what could really happen. A scuffle also broke out, and one of the guys involved did all that while holding his baby, which is absolutely insane. Then, some way, somehow, GM Howie Roseman got hit in the forehead with a beer can. That left an epic mark on his forehead, and he had quite the line on the mic at the rally.
I bleed for this city! Go Eagles!
Well done by Howie, because I bleed for this city is quite the freaking bar. Now, 2 of my favorite moments from the parade featured this fan who was in the middle of yakking up his McMuffin, yet couldn't miss the Eagles chant. While that was great, my second favorite part of the parade was probably when Saquon Barkley was walking down during the parade and he recognized the team's ball boy in the crowd. He was basically then like, bro, what are you doing on that side of the fence? Picked him up and told him to come on and walk with the team, which was freaking awesome. Imagine being that ball boy and Saquon, of all people, recognized you and told you to get over here. Jalen Hurts was also soaking everything up as he was wearing this fancy hat and the crowd rained down MVP chants upon him. He was also rocking this Love Hurts hoodie, which is pretty clever, especially on Valentine's Day. Josh Sweat borrowed Chris Long's fur coat that he wore at their last Super Bowl parade in 2018. And CJ Gardner-Johnson continued to be a massive troll wearing this insane hoodie that read, "Swifties can LAX my balls." Obviously, the Roman numerals stand for Super Bowl 59, so that is certainly a choice. But let's move on from that nonsense because the New York Jets are officially moving on from more nonsense and Aaron Rodgers. They released a joint statement from their new head coach and GM. Then owner Woody Johnson had his own statement in which he said he will forever be grateful that Aaron chose to join them to continue his Hall of Fame career, but basically that meant thanks for everything. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. I already talked about this in more depth during Wednesday's video, so check that out if you haven't already. But something I didn't mention is that by releasing Rodgers, the Jets will take on $49 million in dead money. There's some different ways you could split up that dead cap over the next couple of seasons if you opt for a post-June 1st release. Blah, blah, blah. Doesn't matter. All in all, Aaron Rodgers earned $75 million from the Jets for only 18 active games. That's basically theft. If Chiefsaholic is in prison for what he did, Aaron Rodgers should definitely be soon to follow. Anyway, the question for the Jets now is, what the heck will they be doing next at quarterback? Their backup behind Rodgers is Tyrod Taylor, a guy who's been in the league since 2011, but mostly as a backup, and he's bounced around quite a bit, playing for several different teams. 7 different teams to be in fact. He is under contract for next year though, and if they strike out on all these guys I'm about to mention, he might be their best option for next year. Part of the problem is they have the 7th pick in the draft, so you're probably not able to land one of the top quarterbacks in this year's draft in Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders unless they move mountains to trade up into the top 3. Their best bet is the free agency market, but there's not a lot to get excited about there either. Sam Darnold is by far the most appealing free agent quarterback on the market coming off the season he just had, and he's still only 27 years old. But it would be pretty wild if the same team that drafted him 3rd overall back in 2018, then traded him after 3 disastrous seasons, now signs him to a long-term deal. Wherever Darnold actually ends up, he's going to be in line for a nice payday. This isn't always accurate, but SpotTrack projects him to make around $40 million a year. That sounds a bit high considering how his season ended with the Vikings, specifically the last 2 games, but it's not so bad when you know that would slate him around the 14th highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So the Jets could go that route, though I have no idea if they would seriously consider bringing Darnold back or not. If not, they could look for a bridge quarterback to hold them over maybe until they identify their quarterback of the future. There's a couple options there. The first is Kirk Cousins. Atlanta is expected to release him and eat a bunch of dead money to do so, which would then allow New York to sign him for dirt cheap. He obviously had a roller coaster season with the Falcons that led him to getting benched, but at one point they were 6-3, and he led them on multiple game-winning drives and even threw for a career-high 509 yards against the Bucs early on in the year. So they could maybe talk themselves into the soon-to-be 37-year-old veteran for at least 1 year. From one elderly quarterback that tore his Achilles to another would definitely be a Jets thing to do. No disrespect, though, to Kirk Cousins. I think he's got a little bit left in the tank for sure. But then, of course, there's also Russell Wilson. He's an interesting one, though, because the belief around the league had been that the Steelers would be moving on from Russ and letting him walk into free agency. Yet earlier this week, Adam Schefter said he spoke with Russell Wilson and the tone that he got from him was, quote, entirely different than the reports that are out there. So Schefter thinks that Russ definitely believes he has a chance to be back in Pittsburgh as a QB1. We shall see. That's obviously from Russell Wilson's side. That could be a little bit of a marketing ploy to drive up his value, but no matter what happens, the Jets have their work cut out for them. That's for sure, though I think they made the right move, for what it's worth, in cutting ties with Aaron Rodgers. Next up, Bills running back James Cook made the news this week when he went on Instagram Live and penned his own comment that said $15 million a year, which we can obviously deduce that means he's looking to get paid around that much. Well, that's a piss ton of money for a running back. He'll be heading into the final year of his rookie contract in 2025, but is eligible for an extension this offseason and could potentially hold out if he doesn't get the money he's looking for. $15 million per year would put him only behind Christian McCaffrey as the second highest paid back in the league. There's no denying the season he's coming off of. To be clear, he was literally tied for the most rushing touchdowns in the league with Derrick Henry and Jahmyr Gibbs. He ran for over 1,000 yards for the second straight year while averaging a solid 4.9 yards per carry. On top of that, he didn't have as great of a season in terms of pass catching as he did last year. 32 grabs for 250 yards and a couple touchdowns, but that's fine for a running back, especially when you look at his rushing stats. But is he really worth $15 million per year? I'm not trying to hate on the guy. He may be a top 10 back in the league, but with the way the Bills use him, he's far from a workhorse. He was on the field for less than 45% of the team's offensive snaps this season. Compare that to CMC last year when he was actually healthy, and he was on the field for over 75% of the time. Saquon was on the field for nearly 70% of the Eagles snaps this season, and even Jonathan Taylor was on the field for 65% of the Colts snaps. I bring those names up because that's who he wants to be paid like. $15 million a year would put him behind CMC, yet ahead of Barkley and Taylor. Again, it's not a knock against James Cook, but I'm not sure his usage justifies him making more than Saquon Barkley, right? James Cook's stats would look even better most likely if he was on a different team, but Buffalo's situation is pretty unique because you have Josh Allen, a quarterback who has over 100 rushing attempts every year. It's an interesting situation, though, and one to monitor because Buffalo is currently in the negatives from a cap space perspective. They will get there, don't worry, but it's not like they got money to just throw around at this point in time. The Bills could just say F it and trade James Cook this offseason, opting to draft a running back from this year's draft class instead, or they could try and work a deal out that's a bit more team-friendly, knowing that James Cook's $15 million APY declaration on social media is merely him trying to leverage for as much money as he could possibly get. That's pretty common to do. There's also this option. The Bills could do absolutely nothing this year and have him play out the last year of his deal. James Cook wasn't the only star player to take to Instagram recently, and he will definitely be far from the last. But yesterday, T. Higgins posted this quote to his IG that said, "Priorities are rare. Options are everywhere." Now, this could mean absolutely anything or nothing or something in between, but with him being a pending free agent, people felt like this was a clear message to the Bengals. He's definitely a top free agent wide receiver on the market, and Jeremy Fowler of ESPN said that people he spoke to around the league believes that Higgins will land a deal that pays north of $30 million per season. If he got exactly that, $30 million per year, he would be tied with Tyreek Hill as the sixth highest paid receiver in the league. Burrow has been advocating for some of his top players on the team to get paid, but how the heck will they be able to afford T. Higgins at around $30 million per year and then pay Jamar Chase Justin Jefferson level money around $35 million APY on top of that? Higgins is a great receiver, but the most catches he's ever had in a season is 74. The most yards he's had is 1,091. The most touchdowns he's had is 10. Fine numbers, just not wide receiver 1, top 10 receiver in the league type numbers. That's probably more of a testament to Jamar Chase and him being elite than it is an indictment on Higgins. Yet the Bengals have some tough decisions to make here. It probably makes more sense to franchise tag Higgins a second time, which would cost around $26 million and royally piss him off, but that's more digestible than a $30 million APY multi-year deal. To be clear, a second franchise tag in a row would definitely come off as disrespectful, and I'm not sure what exactly would take place if they did that, but maybe they tag him with the thought of trading him, so it's a win-win for both teams. They get some draft capital out of him. I don't know how much they would actually want or actually get, but then Higgins would also get paid the money he feels like he deserves, yet it would be from a different team. Some within the organization thinks that the Bengals can somehow work out contracts with both of these guys, talking about Higgins and Jamar Chase, but good God, when you're paying Burrow as much as you are, top quarterback money, then those two, that is a lot of money wrapped into 3 players on the team. And then, that's not to mention their defense was awful last year. But hey, if they actually did tag and trade Higgins, kind of like the Chiefs did with the L'Jarius Sneed last year, you're going to have a receiver-needy team that would then at least make it worth it for Cincy to move on from Higgins. Then you could just draft another receiver early in the 2025 draft. But hey, let me know your thoughts on this situation down below with both the Jets, the Bengals, and the Bills with James Cook. And with that, I'll see y'all next time.